Greetings to all of you listeners and watchers out there. My name is Nelson Delgado. I'm a certified emotion code and body code practitioner in Mississauga, Ontario. I'm an energy psychologist. I'm just a fellow human being who went through a bout of depression years ago and had to ask some pretty deep questions and called upon my, I guess you could say, my spirituality to come through and a higher power to come through to send me a message or a direction which I should go in order to resolve my current or my past life struggles. That being said, I went through my path. I discovered Eckhart Tolle. I did not go to his retreat, but I did go to something similar called the Coming Home Retreat. I did an Enlightenment Intensive, and within 3.5 days, the 6 to 8 months worth of depression that I was experiencing, where I was not a functional human being with my wife and children when I came home from work, was essentially lifted. And I had to understand why. So the process of the Enlightenment Intensive was that you would allow the subconscious to surface whatever was pleasant or unpleasant in regards to key questions when the person who's in front of you, who is a participant, listens without emotional expression. Now, this process lasted 3.5 days, and within about the first day and a half, the depression lifted. And so my only takeaway from that is that the depression was legitimate, but the process was equally legitimate, meaning when you are allowing yourself to share the most vulnerable, deepest parts of your psyche and your experience and your life story, the end result is that you are freeing up space for something else to enter. So whatever you unload, something else will fill the void when the vacancy is large enough. Now, I'm not going to say what fills in the void because then that would spoil the surprise. Needless to say, after 3.5 days, I returned home a completely transformed person. I was far more gracious, far more patient, far more present with everything that I did. That does not mean that that lasted ever since. That means that I experienced what it was like to be truly in tune with the self. The challenge in this world is that we are still obligated to provide care for those that we love and to do the vocational work or just the regular work that we do every day in order to pay the bills, so on and so forth. Does that mean I crashed? Absolutely. Did I crash into duality? Absolutely. But it does not mean that I was unable to come back to it. I still am able to come back to it, but it requires me to spend enough time in solitude in order for me to get into that centered state, that grounded state where I'm receptive to higher influence, all-knowing influence, divine influence. And every day I'm challenged, knowing that I'm going to have my shadow work still ahead of me. So the most difficult pill to swallow regarding the life process and enlightenment process is that maintaining your enlightenment would mean that you'd have to be completely transcending the physical form. So if we are embodied, that means we have a purpose to fulfill on this planet, and we have choices to make, and our choices, wherever they come from, whether it be the physical egoic self or the immortal divine self, and how they balance the needs that each other meet, that require to be met. When we balance that, generally we're living a good life. And emotions play a very vital role in the life experience. Without emotions, you wouldn't have motivation to live, or motivation to resolve, or motivation to do anything. Emotions are an essential part of physical life. Our endocrine systems, whether it's a human being or any other being really, are stimulated by emotional responses. Our nervous system is stimulated by emotional responses. Our cardiovascular system, our immune system are all intrinsically tied to our emotional responses. It is after the emotional response surfaces where we have to make decisions on what is the best course of action moving forward. So emotions are an analogous trigger to respond to something. So the emotions aren't negative or positive, although in physical form they can have in their extremes both a negative and a positive effect to our physiology. But the important thing here is to understand how important your emotional state is. And when we completely understand what our emotions are trying to convey as a message, then we can contemplate on what the most appropriate action should be, both for ourselves and the world around us. We also inherit emotional trauma, whether we are in the womb or whether it be from lineage patterns from the ancestry. So we need to come to terms with our culture, the history of that culture, and how it played out, and how some of the trauma from that history continues to play out even to this day. And so that we can collectively identify what needs to change. Because it's important to have different culture. Every tribe has a benefit to offer to humanity. That doesn't mean that the belief systems can't change, the traditions can't change. What's important is that we address the that don't contribute to a benevolent lifestyle where people are interdependent, can trust one another, can be transparent, use good discernment, and not be cynical or judgmental or skeptical as a predisposed state of being. So I know that's a lot to say in this video, but it's important for us to understand that psychology is still in its infancy, because psychology does not really explore enough about spirituality. It will examine the brain, it'll examine the nervous system. The only challenge is that psychology has not touched on areas of the heart and any of the cardial neural activity that happens in the heart. Because the heart has more pathways to the brain than the brain does to the heart really does need to be thoroughly researched in terms of how it responds to its external environment and what it does to both the brain and the gut in terms of the communication therein in the vagus nerve, and some of the talk about the polyvagal theory. Now, there's a lot to go in there. I'm not going to spend too much time there, but it's important for us to understand that when we experience something strong enough and that we repeat to ourselves something enough, our bodies, our subconscious, acts like a videotape recorder, and it will play back whatever programming we allow to enter, whether we created it or that we adopted from our environment. If we do not address this, if we do not sit with this, move through this, identify it, understand what it had to offer in terms of experience, any wisdom, then if we do not go there, then we remain enslaved two patterns that will keep us in suffering. Every experience is meant to be appreciated, whether it was adverse or whether it was nourishing. Without the adversity, there cannot be a means to facilitate correction. Meaning, whether you wish to correct this behavior by, taking on a vocation related to helping those that have experienced the same adversity, or you become someone like those who hurt you, but in a different way. The point is, we have choice. We have the choice to transcend our depression. We have the choice of not allowing our anxiety to control us. And oftentimes, a lot of that is because we've recorded so much within the memory of our body. And I'm going to get into that right now. If neural pathways in the brain can record memories, the question is whether or not the memories are stored in the tissues or in the energy that runs the tissues in our body. So here's that big question. Are we believing that our tissues, our memories, that they're intrinsically tied? If that's the case, then we can research and potentially prove that trauma can be registered in muscle tissue. It can be registered in facial tissue. It can be registered in liver tissue, heart tissue, spleen, any type of tissue that we have in our body. Any trauma can be stored in. And that trauma, if not resolved, if contained and unprocessed, over time will create an imbalance in the physical body. It will create a block where the body, the energy field, and the systems in the body cannot go to correctly. The actual tissue cannot function according to an area of the body that has not been resolved to achieve homeostasis. So if there's a restriction in the body, then there'll be a restriction in the tissues given a period of time. Challenge is that we all wait until things have gotten to their absolute worst in order for us to go to our doctors to try and find a way to resolve it, such as having our gallbladder removed, our appendix removed, having surgeries, removing cancer tissue. We know that if we gave ourselves time to deal with our trauma and took the necessary medication in the beginning stages to help accelerate the process of healing, whether it be pharmacological or plant medicine, or if it's the mental for the mental component, if it's the mushroom medicine, then if we apply the correct medicines along with the trauma release therapy, the end result will be that you will heal faster. However, healing only plays one part. We need to create a routine where every day we are nourishing ourselves with what we know to be true in ourselves. So if we require deep introspection towards our childhood, where we felt we were in flow, we were happy, we were able to express, and we weren't inhibited to and catch, when were you inhibited by others? What did you do that made you happy that made other people feel uncomfortable? investigate those areas, because oftentimes those were tests. Not everybody was going to be comfortable with the way we were going to be, but at the same time, maybe it is very possible that we were meant to test them, to see that what we had to provide was okay, it posed no threat, and that we should be embraced for our differences and the potentials therein. But as a result, because of of constant reconditioning and patterns from culture and history, we are being told to conform as opposed to allow ourselves to express. And the challenge with that is that when we are feeling inhibited to express because there's a shame element to it, there's a potential humiliation element to it, we will then constrict. And then what ends up happening is where we diminish the quality of our energetic signature. And we were meant to share it. Yes, we have family. Yes, there are probably soul contracts involved there where we're each learning from each other. There is a balance, a karmic exchange being done, and that we're meant to learn and resolve with each other. Then if we can do that constructively, then the world will shift far faster than ever before. So it's important for us right now to actually get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And not saying that all of us are well equipped to do that for each other. There are certain people in the world that can listen to the most horrific things that have happened to you and can remain calm, compassionate, and detached, knowing that all that you needed was to help surface, reflect, contemplate, release, and then make changes as to how you want to address the next challenge that could be the same as the last. So you can create a loop that's more towards empowerment and creative encouragement and expression than it is for inhibition and to block oneself from being revealed and from being expressed. So thank you very much for your time. And moving forward, I'll be doing more videos. I think I'm going to be going through depression first because that is what I'm most familiar with. And then I'll be going into the other emotional states so that you get an understanding of what they're trying to say, so that you can move through each one every day. And sometimes they're going to team up together. Sometimes you're going to have anger and anxiety team up together. But it's important for us to essentially address what the message is at the deeper levels. We need to slow everything down so that we can become more aware of what needs to be done and how it can be done in a way that comes natural to us. So we don't have to do things that other people do because it worked for them. We need to know how to work how to work something that in a way that works for us and it works the way we know how to do it. That way you don't have to step out of, I'm not saying your limits, but to not having to worry about conforming to a state of empowerment that might bring you more resistance than flow. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope, and listening, and I hope that moving forward, that what I'll have to offer you will bring you a lot of clarity and compassion for your journey as a human being on this planet at this time in history. Thanks again for everything, and I hope to talk soon. Good life. Love you all.